Now, according to reports, Australian corporates and their clients, at least, perception of fees and legal services have been falling at a steady rate since 2007. Next guest saying that the Ides of March for professional services are taking hold, but what are the consequences? George Beaton is indeed from our Melbourne studio today, the director of Beaton Capital and Beaton Research and Consulting. George, welcome to you. I suppose it's a bloody metaphor to invoke with Julius Caesar and the assassination, but you're saying what? This is an inevitability of having a blinkered approach to the way, I suppose, the evolution of the market is occurring.
That's exactly right, Carson. It's bloody if you don't get it. It's huge opportunities if you do get it as a firm. And of course, on the client side, the opportunities are rampant. The metaphor is designed really to not just the assassination of Caesar, but more the change from the Roman Empire to the Roman Republic, which I understand historians mark his assassination with, and the change in circumstances of mighty Rome. And that's what I used this metaphor at this time of the year for, to try to explain and catch attention to the fact that in the current market, the slowing of fees, fee rises that is, in fact it's not just slowing, the top 35 firms in the country by size are in aggregate showing a decline that's going into its 6th year now. And in our view, this isn't cyclical, it's not related to the economy, it's not just a protracted recession courtesy of the GFC. This is the structural change that all industries go through, and now it's the legal services industry's time.
It seems, though, that you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. You want to increase your market share. The net effect of that, you must steal business away from your competition. How do you do that? You offer to undercut. Now, you're saying that is a road to ruin.
It is, Carson. If you focus on your top line, which is what market share battles are about, we should really be talking about share of client loyalty, share of client advocacy, or share of profit generated in the industry. These are much better measures. But unfortunately, all the league tables, everything out in the public domain, the whole big law legal establishment focuses on the top line and size. And that's what drives the psyche. The behaviour should be about getting better, not bigger. And that will then lead to more satisfied clients, retention of clients, and minimisation of price-based competition.
It's so much is down to ego, though, is it not? And how do you kind of backpedal on that one? Once you've built yourself up and you've plumped yourself up as being this behemoth, it's very difficult to kind of say, all right, that strategy doesn't necessarily apply. How kind of at risk are you there of serving up mixed messages to clients?
I think it's hugely difficult for the legal establishment, Carson, hugely. We've seen 50 or 60 years of expansion, growth, basically in a seller's market. Ever since the end of the Second World War and the industrial reconstruction and massive capital booms that went on, and the large law firms and their sophistication were required to support that. Now the market has turned. It was accentuated, not caused by the GFC, accentuated by the GFC, and the clients are now in the driving seat. So it's a classic buyer's market now. And buyer's markets do not go back to seller's markets for the incumbent or established firms. All that firms can do is re-engineer themselves. In other words, alter their attitudes and the way they structure themselves. Altering their attitudes in respect of labour and regarding labour far more as a variable cost than as a fixed cost. Reducing their space per person in their offices. Go back 10 years, it was 24 square metres per person. It's forecast to go down to 12 square metres per person in about 5 years' time. I would argue that's still far too much. Far too much. We should be talking about much smaller occupancy, much more variable cost in the way IT is provided, and much more variable cost in the way sophisticated legal talent is provided. All these things are being done by some firms and by some legal services providers. So there's nothing brand new to the world here. but it is in the mindset of the large firms who have, let's face it, been incredibly successful, are very sophisticated, are able to meet clients' needs superbly. But unfortunately, the rules of the game are changing for these firms, and rules inevitably creep up. And like any industry, you know, whether it's the stockbroking industry, or the car rental industry, or the taxi industry, you know, or the automotive manufacturing industry. All of these industries, the time comes, the Ides of March come in all industries.
George, how much comfort can one take from our geographic proximity to Asia and the perception at the very least, but correct me if I'm wrong here, that doing business a la the old method could still find favour with an Asian clientele in heartland Asia, i.e. there's that kind of nostalgia for big is better still existing there, and to be brash and to be big is actually commended still.
Carson, very good question. We have recent research on this subject across 12 Asian countries, and in the majority, for domestic clients, for these major emerging massive family-owned businesses, government-owned enterprises, what you say remains true. It is simply that this is more of a developed market phenomenon we're looking at in Australia or Canada, the United States, the United Kingdom, Europe, and increasingly in South America. But in the boom of Asia, we have yet to encounter this for the large domestic clients. Some of them are mega clients, of course, but they still buy in a traditional way, and firms still serve them in a traditional way. But in Asia now, the multinationals who are operating there, whether it's the banks or the new economy firms like Cisco or the manufacturers, they are being globally dictated, and they are buying in developed country ways. So you have got a divided market in buying behaviour, and firms are having difficulty adjusting to that fact.
George, it's fascinating, but what's even more fascinating is the body of research that you have amassed to kind of buttress these points, which does make it even more compelling. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
Director of Beaton Capital and Beaton Research and Consulting there, George Beaton. Thanks for your company. We'll see you in a week.